Hello. We'll talk now about Lina Bo Bardi, a very important Italian architect who worked and lived in Brazil. And I like very much these words, an architecture of perfect imperfection, that someone used, this Martin Filler, about her and about her work. An architecture of perfect imperfection. I think we will all do better if we welcome this perfect imperfection, which applies very well to the work of Lina Bo Bardi. So Lina Bo Bardi, born Aquilina Bo, was an Italian-born Brazilian modernist architect. As you can see, born on December 5th, and that's the reason we talk about her today, because today is December 5th, but 2023. So she was a prolific architect and designer. She devoted her working life, most of it spent in Brazil, to promoting the social and cultural potential of architecture and design. While she studied under radical Italian architects, she quickly became intrigued with Brazilian vernacular design and how it could influence a modern Brazilian architecture. During her lifetime, it was difficult to be accepted among the local Brazilian architects because she was both a so-called foreigner and a woman. She is recognized for her the unique style of the many architectural illustrations she created over her lifetime, along with her tendency to leave poignant notes to herself. She is also known for her furniture and jewelry designs. The popularity of her works has increased since 2008, when a 1993 catalog of her works was republished. A number of her product designs are being revived. An exhibition such as her 1968 exhibition of glass and concrete easels have been recreated. And here is an example of such an exhibition. Lina Bo Bardi, Radical Pedagogies, Lina Bo Bardi's theory of an immediate life architecture. I love these words, immediate life architecture. This is about the very essence of architecture. It has to be nourished by life, and it has to address life, and the relationship between life and architecture goes well beyond, you know, theorizing excessively or using the ethereal and pretentious world of concepts and so on. You have to start from life. And if it is immediate, all for the better. So Lina Bo Bardi, in her modesty, left a very important trace in the sand of architecture. Arch Daily, anyway, this text that I reproduce here says that Arch Daily is continuing our partnership with Radical Pedagogies, an ongoing multi-year collaborative research project led by Beatriz Colomina with a team of PhD students of the School of Architecture at Princeton University in the United States, presenting a series of paradigmatic cases in architectural education. In this fourth example of radical pedagogies in Latin America, Vanessa Grossman presents Lina Bo Bardi's application for a chair. She applied, like many of us have to do for a job, her application for a chair at the Faculty of Architecture and Urban Studies at the University of Sao Paulo. Although the application was rejected, as often happens the case, or as often is the case with the important creators, unfortunately, it's like the sarcasm of fate. So although the application was rejected by the faculty commission, the submitted essay still is a singular source of new ideas for architectural education. And let's read a little bit about this. This was the cover of the book published with her ideas, contributions to, anyway, the theory of architecture. But she was a doer, and she built. And here she is in her own home, a modernist statement in Brazil. The theory of an immediate life architecture. These are her own words. And here she is. And I love this picture of her, a serious, sensitive person, maybe a dreamer, but also a doer who knew how to build, some very enticing and inciting buildings. The glass house from 1951, and you saw a picture already of her, Lina Bo Bardi's residence. She lived with her own husband there. This is the building. I'm okay, maybe it's not striking any longer after seeing so many modernist buildings. But at that time, 1951, Brazil was still, a building, if not shocking, but impressive with its novelty and simplicity at the same time. And also, what is remarkable here is that she places a huge, giant tree inside the. It's actually the soul of the building. It's inside the building. Sorry, this is another another building, and we are going to see it. So this is the house that she built in 1951. You know, and in Brazil, the relationship with the outside is more, more organic, so to speak, because of the climate. It's a warm climate, so you can see you enter from the outside directly into the inside without a vestibule. Here she is in from the back, contemplating the beauty of nature. And that's how the building, the interior, the living room looks like. It's a foundation, perhaps, with a sitting, at least the armchair is by Charles Sims. Yeah, we go quickly because we have to talk about three architects today, all related to the 5th of December. And today, as I said, it is the 5th of December. So we are just contemplating her own house after she departed temporarily from this earth. I say temporarily because who knows? Maybe she returns in some form, maybe as an architect again. The beautiful tree that refuses to be marginalized, so it's right in the center of the courtyard, and the house is organized respecting this beautiful tree. This sorry The resolution of the plans is not great. I apologize, but you can still see it's not the smallest house on earth. It's not the largest either. And yes, it became a museum, just as a so-called important person becomes a statue. The house of an important person becomes a museum. um, Yes, magnificent nature, magnificent tree. You see the lover of books. At the same time, sometimes somehow books are hard to avoid. You love beauty, you love knowledge, you love nature, you love books. Bobardi studio in Sao Paulo in 1986. Now, this is another house she built for herself 35 years later. So after 35 years, she built this, a very different house, a smaller house, a more modest house, but a brilliant architecture, in my opinion. If we talk today about primitive futures, here is a possible glimpse at something that might belong to what we might call a primitive future. Lina Bo Bardi, again, surrounded by nature, and here she is in a chair that she designed, and back to the second home that she built for herself. Uh, it's possible that by that time her husband died. So a brilliant architect living and working in modest circumstances, much more modest than many so-called creative architects today, who are far from being as important as she was. But we see that even in 1986, no, in 1986, when, well, I don't know actually when this picture was taken, but we see her staring at the computer. So, the house might be, might look primitive and primal, but Its Majesty, the computer, is already there. Bravo to her. And I love the warmth of the interior and the simplicity, and it's, you can tell it's the house of a sensitive person, a person who understood that to practice architecture is not a business and should not be considered as such. It's a creative activity. And here she is in another chair she designed, and another chair she designed. She benefited from the abundance of wood in, massive wood, solid wood in Brazil. This is not IKEA furniture. This is, the real thing. The wood frame is wood, and probably a very high quality wood, very strong, and maybe lightweight. Maybe, I don't know. Another chair by her. Architects love to design chairs, so she was no exception. But she designed other things as well. I always say this to young architects and students: design a chair. If you don't have a client, if you don't have a commission, you do have a pencil and a piece of paper or a laptop or something. Design a chair. It's very rewarding. It's therapeutic, actually. And become some kind of a self-portrait, a chair. On the other hand, the chair is difficult. It's difficult to design, and Miss van der Rohe said at one moment that at one point that a chair could be it's more difficult to design than a skyscraper, and in a way, it's true. Now, a sugar mill converted to a craft museum in Bahia. Um, Here, she worked with an existing context. Um, what is amazing here is that stair that she designed and built, because it animates the whole space, the whole room, like a sculpture, but it's actually a stair. And you see, it has a certain monumentality because you see the human proportion. The stair is exquisite. It's structural, it's rigid, and it's also aerial somehow. It's like a sculpture inserted between those four poles that also has the function of bringing you from downstairs upstairs and vice versa. Very fine stair, isn't it? And you see how it is made. Solid wood, of course. It goes without saying. Great. Stairs usually are, chances for expressing architecturalness, and in this case as well. It's a creation. It's musical, and you see it in plan. It's all there is. You don't need a lot, but you can do with simple means a lot. This is what a good architect does. You invent things. You create something. This stair does the same job as other countless stairs, but it's still unique. It doesn't copy other stairs. Is by itself a creation, the creation of Lina Bo Bardi. And of course, wood never lets you down. If you have affection for wood, wood returns the favor, returns the affection. Here she is with a kitten. Now, this house from 1958 to 1964, I love this house. It's again, it's so-called primitivism is actually a romantic feature, and it's a splendid example showing that you can do a lot with very little. An existing building where she added the swimming pool and the veranda, and you see the abundance of nature. Particularly for our time, I think the examples of this kind of architecture are important because they underline the very necessary relationship between the building and the garden, or the forest, or nature, or trees, or bushes, or grass. We cannot afford any longer to neglect nature. Here she is on a building site. Now, Teatro Oficina, a beautiful example of a kind of an anti-theater, because it is not, the typical pretentious Western European theater or opera building with two lions left and right and with a majestic stair that leads to the entrance. It's the very opposite. It's a proletarian theater, democratic, open, simple, inexpensive, serving life, not the red carpet. And I think we can learn a lot about this theater and about theater in general from this remarkable architectural achievement in an existing building, very inappropriate for this function. I mean, who would think of making a theater in this long and narrow space? Well, she did, and she did brilliantly. And I regret I am not in Brazil to be able to watch a performance, a theater performance in this very democratic and very open theater in a very unconventional space. It's not a typical theater plan at all. And here it is. It's life. Again, from the immediacy of life, you create architecture with, the banality of a scaffolding structure, some chairs, but it inspires this space. It's truly inspiring, both to the actors and the audience. This is one of the most radical theaters ever built. I mean, look at this facade of the theater, with a beautiful tree allowed to be, and then the interior breathing life, and modest cars at the bottom, no scientifically conceived parking lot, anything like it. It's life, and it's yes, there are cars. What can we do? We live in modernity, and we do have cars, but somehow, if you look at the whole thing, this this theater is clearly saying yes to unpretentious life. The life of a neighborhood in a city. It's not positioned, emphatically. It's a theater at the periphery, but at the periphery you rediscover life. Yes, even welcoming ruin, graffitis on the walls. It's fine. It's life. It's sincerity, and we need sincerity. And look at this, the interior. You don't even know any longer who is the actor, who is the audience, who is in the audience. They're all together, and that's how it should be, actually. And look at this. A theater on a corridor. This is architecture at its best, in my opinion, and done with the simplest means. Scaffoldings, yes, scaffoldings, but they are beautiful in the, simple, transparent attributes as structure. Well, some would say, well, you know, this is not really architecture. Of course, it is real architecture with a capital A. In fact, all letters should be capital. And that dog seems to agree with me. I love this building. It gives you hope, really. Theater should be part of life, part of the theater of life, part of the street, even. And this building evoke something like this. Look, who think? I mean, here, where is the stage actually? You know, the stage is this corridor in a way, and then the plants are part of the ambiance, and then you have all kinds of cables. You have nature, you have technology, but not an oppressive technology. It's beautiful. Life and theater and architecture together. And look at the audience. Great. This is great. It's a gentle avant-garde. Let's put it in this way. Yes, a gentle avant-garde. And look at that bike hanging there. Yes, and with objects maybe found on the street. Why not? Is it sustainable? Yes, it's highly sustainable. You are going to see also a chapel itself highly sustainable. Should we build highly sustainable chapels? Yes, we should. Instead of a pretentious, religious, dogmatic, heavy syrup buildings that are built even in our country. And look at the theater by Lina Bo Bardi. A tree, an old building allowed to rust. There's some enclosure there with glass, and there is the theater. It's one of the best theaters ever built. That's what I think. Lina Bo Bardi, this is another interesting work, SESC Pompeia, 1982. Look what she did with this. Well, there were existing structures in concrete, but look at the piercing, the windows, the openings in the concrete walls, and the connections. I imagine, I don't know, but it's possible that she created these bridges between the two buildings. It's a building which would be considered by some brutalist, but it's a building which has a sensitivity which is not brutal or brutalist at all. Look at this window. It's an event, an architectural event in itself. Why did she choose this window, no, informally designed? It's exquisite. So who says that architecture is not an art are wrong. Of course it is an art. I mean, at its best, it is an art. You need an artistic disposition to be able to do something like this. You say it's just a detail. Yes, it's a detail, but it's a detail which belongs to the soul of the building. And yes, it's a center for culture, for art, for exhibitions, unafraid of rough textures or rough materials. It's about the truth of life again. It's not about embellishing things. Good architects very rarely use finishes, like plaster and hiding the makeup of buildings. We don't need makeup when there is a powerful inner beauty. You don't need makeup. Makeup is for weaker beings. And look at these buildings; they don't have any makeup. I mean, the only so-called intervention that probably was not there from the beginning is the redness of the paint of the doors. But the concrete is allowed to be itself without being hidden behind plaster. And this is the model of the building, and look at it, alive, so to speak. Now, who could say that this is not a great work? It is a great work. And built more than 40 years ago. I mean, built, she worked with existing structures, and she just had some interventions there that are, very inspired and inspiring. I mean, what Kazuyo Sejima does now with, not just her, I just took as an example with, unaligned square windows. Lina Bo Bardi did this almost half a century earlier. Again, who said that this is not great architecture? It is. Very much so. It inflames the heart, the soul, because it has power, it has raw power, as opposed to Zaha Hadid. And I mentioned in the discussion before I started that there was an exhibition in London showing the work both of Lina Bo Bardi and Zaha Hadid, and they shared the same poster, exactly, in half. But as opposed to Zaha Hadid, who claimed at one point that she was looking for a raw, R-A-W, a raw, earthy, vital architecture, which she actually never arrived at, with all due respect for Zaha Hadid, because her architecture is not raw and is not earthy. Lina Bo Bardi's architecture is. It is raw and it is earthy. If I look at this picture, what do I see? I see some existing concrete buildings. It's possible they belong to some industrial function and past. But she brought in playfulness, because if you look, the windows and the doors, they are painted with red. The redness, which expresses passion and expresses love, but it's also the playfulness of the shapes. Look at the piercing, the openings in the concrete wall, massive as it is, but the piercings, the openings, are informal and playful and artistic. It's about playfulness. It's about being a child again, so to speak, and that playfulness is very important. And she differentiates between the building on the right and the building on the left. The theme is the same, windows piercing the concrete massive walls, but on the right they are square, and on the left they are, organic, so to speak, or informal. And this is the plan. It's beautiful. Because there is also tension. It's not a placid architectural configuration. Those connections between the two buildings, are not neglecting even the labyrinth and the visceralization of architecture. And functioning, no? I mean, there is an appreciable audience here. The public of all ages. Why not bring the water inside the building as well? Well, in Brazil, it's easier than in other parts of the world, but she was in Brazil at that time. And look at this drawing by Lina Bo Bardi. What architect today would indulge in this kind of graphic work? Imagine a student in a school of architecture doing this kind of drawing for the atelier in the school. It would be immediately dismissed. Why? Because we forgot to be playful. I mean, look, she introduces in this drawing, I don't know if, yes, here you see it better. It's beautiful. It's beautiful because it says yes to life. It says yes to insects. It says yes to animals. It says yes to plants. It's beautiful. But with this kind of drawing, you would fail the admission in most architecture schools, because morose as they are and so-called important, they would not understand, you know, how could you do something like this, so naive, so infantile. But it's not naive, or if it is, it is in that superior sense in which Buckminster Fuller recommended us to dare to be naive. So Lina Bo Bardi dared to be naive. A chair by her, massive wood. You can trust this chair. No doubt it will last more than the Egyptian pyramids. And this is how it was made. You know, in a sketch, it shows you immediately and you understand it immediately how it came into being. Very simple. Out of 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. Okay, this is the, you know, the largest plan of the building that we just saw. Loisir, no, culture, no, conversion or reconversion. Here is the architect, and the raw concrete of the building as she left it, and it was again and again. You need artistic disposition. You need the artistic attributes. You need to be an artist as well in order to uh, take decisions in this respect, which have to do with aesthetics. But it's not an aestheticism here. In a way, it's the opposite of aestheticism. Doesn't matter where you take pictures of or from, it still looks great. Because the conception of what she did here is great. It's resolutely modern, almost provocatively so. Another picture with her in her house, and the window in that in this complex of buildings. Why did she make them like this? Why not? Why does everything have to be explained logically? Why can't we just explain illogically? The Sao Paulo Museum of Art, also by Lina Bo Bardi, here it is. Red, the color of passion, the color of love, the color of fire, the color of art, maybe. Red, no? Red, the color of the king. Well, in European alchemy, red was described as belonging to the king and white as belonging to the queen. Yes, a mechanism for displaying art, a large building, but this is not a drawing that belonged to her. It was done by, who knows, a student or someone analyzing a building after the building was built. Here you see the very clear, to use the word that we talked about, the conceptual, representation of the idea that stood behind the building. Very powerful, these vertical structural elements, which she emphasized by making them, or painting them in red. And the redness is also rediscovered or re-employed inside the building, as you can see. The diagonals of connecting two floors, and then the vertical structural elements that support this very large building. Not bad. The Sao Paulo Museum of Contemporary Art. And art, although it inspires itself from nature, here is situated dichotomically almost, or dialectical, vis-a-vis the greenness of nature. So you have the redness of the structure from which the whole prism is suspended, in contrast to the greenness of nature. And underneath the museum, a market. Beautiful, why not? Well, this is an event that was organized probably, having nothing to do with Lina Bo Bardi, but the space underneath is inviting to all kinds of, ephemeral or temporary activities. So in a way, this museum is very generous towards the city because it offers the space underneath it to the city for all kinds of activities. Some of them having nothing to do with art. And that is art right there with redness, with clarity, with force, with vigor, with a big yes addressed to life. Inside the big city, yes, Sao Paulo. Lina Bo Bardi. It takes courage to make something like this, and she did have courage. Look at this. It's very possible that Bernard Tschumi was right when he said a good building can be explained to your grandmother in 1 minute on the phone. This building can also be explained to one's grandmother or grandfather in a minute on the phone. Okay, the, the building is prismatic, but we see at the level of the ground also the sensualities of curves. Uh, so, in fact, what I see on the ground here is very similar to more recent building by Toyo Ito in Taiwan. And you have a concrete wall and you paint it in red, and that's what you get. And look at again at the drawing by this very special architect. Again, what architect would draw something like this? Not many. And I include myself in those not many. No, I include myself in, well, yes, in the, I am one of those who cannot draw like this with this daring naivete. Now, these are her words, stones against diamonds. And this I love as well, because I do believe, like her, I assume, that stones are more important than diamonds, although the world loves the diamonds. Now we love glittering things, expensive things. The more expensive, the better. But do we know what a stone is in its mystery? That gray, so-called banal stone is a mystery in itself. Like Louis Sullivan used to say, it takes great imagination to understand wood as wood, brick as brick, stone as stone, and so on. And it's true. So these are the words of Lina Bo Bardi, Stones Against Diamonds. And I think the whole world should reflect on what she said. It was a collection of essays with this title. So this collection of essays is the first ever English anthology of her writings. It includes texts written when she was still living in Italy, as well as later contributions to a number of Brazilian newspapers, journals, and magazines. An acute critic and a creative thinker, Bo Bardi proposes a series of new parameters for design thinking and practice, such as the notions of historical presence, roughness, and tolerance to imperfection. All three are beautiful. Presented collectively, her texts present a wealth of inspirational thoughts articulated in a refreshingly simple language. So here we see, let's talk a little bit about all three, one by one. The historical present. Well, I mentioned this earlier, that what is truly important, if I am to use this word, doesn't pass. It doesn't become history. It becomes a history in the sense that it doesn't die. It doesn't end. It continues. So a significant so-called past doesn't pass. And because it doesn't pass, it is present. So that's what she meant probably by these two words, historical present. Then roughness. We saw the roughness in the works that I already showed. And then tolerance to imperfection. This shows clearly that Lina Bo Bardi was not a dogmatic, frozen spirit at all. She was open. She was vulnerable. She was accepting the vulnerabilities of life and the vulnerabilities of imperfection and the vulnerabilities of the passing time, and the vulnerabilities of what appears to be not finished or not perfected. A very subtle critic and a very, very subtle creator. A very sensitive. Stones Against Diamonds, Lina Bo Bardi, architecture words. And sketches, drawings of furniture. We saw her sitting in one of those chairs, the one on the left side, the lower left side. Here she is, contemplative nature, no doubt. But you have to have a contemplative nature in order to do something worth doing in the field of art. Now, a chapel, I mentioned it earlier, and it's a magnificent chapel, much better than anything Peter Zumthor, for example, did. Santa Maria dos Anjos Chapel. Look at this. It's brilliantly simple. It's unassuming, and yet it is a chapel. And you discover this even more when you contemplate the inside, the interior. And look at this. If you pass by this building, what would you say this is? Somehow, in its simplicity, it tells you, I am a chapel. But you don't see the sign of the cross. You don't see anything of the religious paraphernalia that accompanies so many churches and chapels and cathedrals. And look at the plan. It's deceptively simple. It's surrounded by this veranda. This is also a metaphor in a way that it doesn't have a back. It's the roundness of God in a way. It's everywhere. But then you have the diagonal direction, the entrance into the building. You enter through the corner in a way, and this becomes kind of a deformed hexagon. And then where the altar is supposed to be, you just have a desk and two windows, left and right. Nothing could be simpler than this. And nothing could be more effective. And the color, again, complementing the color of nature. You have green in nature, you have redness in the building. Because even in green architecture, as we like to call it these days, even green architecture in its essence is actually red, because it's made by man. It's an artificial intervention into, the cosmos of reality, and intrinsically, it is red, even if it's so-called green architecture. It's just that Lina Bo Bardi was more honest than us. This is another great picture. I mean, really, when I look at this picture, I understand immediately what the building is. And you don't need the symbols of any religion. This belongs to any religion, because God belongs to all of us. And even if it's not painted in red, even like this, it has dignity and it has poetry. I love it. I love it. A chapel. Now this is, I don't know what this is and why I placed it there. Here, look at this. This building is telling us to be modest. I mean, how else to situate ourselves in relationship with the divine than from a position of modesty? A triumphant church is a nonsensical way expressing, the reality of fact. How could a church be triumphant, meaning arrogantly triumphant? It can't. Here she is, I don't know, contributing to, with her own hands, to something on, I don't know where. This reminds me of Maya Lin, also contributing personally to something for the Vietnam Memorial. Lina Bo Bardi's Valeria Cirelli's house, built very few years after Lina's glass house, a very solid house in comparison to the glass. We saw already this house, but here we have different pictures. We saw this picture. And you see the similarity between this building and the chapel I just showed. And in a way, the house of God is not dissimilar from the house of man, because man and God are correlative, as Dostoevsky quite well knew. So between this building and the chapel that we just saw is a fundamental similarity, and yet, you cannot say that one building copies the other. Casa sul Mare di Sicilia. This was built in Sicily. This is a building that was, it is by her, but was left, unkept, so to speak. And there was a quest for donations to restore it. I don't know what school of architecture, maybe Architectural Association. We recognize her freedom in piercing the walls with these uninhibited openings. I do think the architecture of Lina Bo Bardi is an architecture of hope, that with simple means she's actually saying architecture is important, but more important than architecture is life and nature. You see, Lina Bo Bardi Fellowship 2016, open call. Somehow her spirit is very much present, even when the building is, attacked by, vitalistic, explosion of natural forms and so on. A chair, we saw her sitting in this chair, Here she is in older age, in her apartment, reflecting, thinking, feeling. That's it. Let's wish her happy birthday. A truly great architect. Thank you.